Welcome back to Speak More Fluently. Have you ever noticed how some people they just sound right when they speak English?
Hmm.
Even if maybe their grammar isn't totally perfect, they still get their point across so easily.
Yeah, there's a certain flow to it.
Exactly. And today we're diving into that secret ingredient. It's really all about the melody of your English, what linguists call intonation.
Right.
So stick with us because you'll find out how these subtle ups and downs in your voice can make a massive difference in how natural and, confident you sound.
It's really quite fascinating, isn't it? Because you can know all the right words, you can have the grammar down, but if that music isn't quite right, something just feels a bit off.
Yeah, off. That's a good word for it.
And we're going to explore how this rise and fall, this pitch variation, it isn't just random noise. It actually follows specific patterns.
Patterns that add meaning.
Exactly. Layers of meaning, often without you even consciously thinking about it. It affects how people interpret what you're saying.
Okay, so this isn't just about speaking louder or softer or faster or slower. What exactly is this intonation then?
Well, think of it simply as the way your voice's pitch goes up and down while you're speaking. It's the pitch variation that creates this kind of melody.
A melody. I like that analogy.
Yeah, and this melody, it does way more than just carry the words themselves. It's almost like an unspoken layer of communication.
Okay.
It signals all sorts of things, whether you're making a statement or asking a question, maybe giving an instruction, or even just hinting at how you feel about something, surprise, doubt, politeness.
This is kind of like the hidden emotion or the intention behind the words.
Precisely. Think about your favorite song. The melody is often what grabs you, what conveys the feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spoken English is, well, sort of similar. Intonation makes it engaging. It helps you connect with the listener. Without it, speech can sound really flat, robotic even.
And maybe confusing.
And definitely confusing sometimes, yeah. It makes it harder for people to really get what you mean, even if the words are correct.
That makes total sense. Okay, so let's get into these patterns you mentioned. We often hear about falling intonation. What's that specifically?
Right. Falling intonation, it's a really common one. Basically, your voice starts on maybe a slightly higher pitch, and then it drops down right at the end of the phrase or sentence.
Drops down at the end. Okay. And where would we typically use that? When does that happen naturally?
Oh, lots of places. You'll hear it all the time in straightforward statements. Like if you just say, I live in London, hear that drop, London.
Yeah, I hear it.
It signals that the thought is, well, complete, done. It's also really typical for most will questions.
The who, what, where ones.
Exactly. Who, what, where, when, why, how. So a question like, where are you going?
Yeah.
Usually has that same downward slide at the end. Going.
Okay. Statements, well, questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere else?
Commands, actually. This sometimes surprises people. But things like, please have a seat. Seat often uses that falling tone, too. It gives it a sense of finality. Authority, maybe.
So the falling sound is like a signal to the listener saying, okay, I'm done with this bit of information, nothing more coming right now.
That's a perfect way to put it. Yeah, it provides a very clear signal that you've finished that particular thought or piece of information. No cliffhangers.
Right, got it. Okay, now, what about the opposite when our voices go up at the end? What's going on there?
Ah, yes. That would be rising intonation. And it's pretty much like you said, the opposite pattern. Your voice generally starts a bit lower and then it moves upwards, usually right at the end of the sentence or clause.
Moves upwards. And when do we tend to do that? What situations call for a rising pitch?
Well, the classic example, the one everyone thinks of first, is yes, no questions.
Right.
If you ask someone, are you busy? Your voice naturally goes up at the end there. It's almost like you're sort of holding the door open for a yes or no answer.
Okay, yes and questions. What else?
You also hear it when you're listing things, especially if the list isn't finished yet. Like, I need to buy milk, eggs, and see how my voice goes up on, and it shows I haven't finished the list yet. There's more to come.
Yeah, it leaves it open.
Exactly. And it's also super common with tag questions, those little phrases tacked onto the end of a statement.
Like, isn't it? Or don't you?
Precisely those. Like, it's a lovely day, isn't it? Often that isn't it part has a rising tone, especially if you're genuinely checking or seeking agreement.
So rising intonation is more like saying, hang on, I'm not quite done. Or maybe your turn, or I'm expecting some kind of response here.
That sums it up nicely, yes. It signals either that you expect an answer, like in a question, or that there's more information on the way, like in a list. It keeps the channel open.
This is where it gets really fascinating for me. How can just the pitch direction, up or down, completely change what the exact same words actually mean?
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? The impact is huge. Let's take a really simple example. The words, "you're sure."
Okay, you're sure.
If I say that with the following intonation, "you're sure," it sounds like a statement. I'm stating that you are sure, maybe confirming something I already thought.
Right, like, okay, I believe you, you're sure.
Exactly. But if I take those exact same words and use a rising intonation, "you're sure," what does it sound like now?
Now it sounds like a question.
Yeah.
Or maybe like I'm surprised
Ish.
or I doubt it a bit.
Precisely. Just that little shift in pitch, that upward curve, flips the meaning completely from a statement to a question, expressing maybe doubt or seeking reassurance.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really is. And it's not just about flipping between statements and questions. These subtle pitch shifts, they communicate a whole range of emotions, too.
Like what?
Well, think about disbelief. If someone tells you something totally unbelievable, you might respond with, "he did what?" with a really high, sharp rise on what. That pitch movement screams disbelief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or sarcasm. That's a tricky one. If you say something like, "oh, fantastic," but you say it in a really flat tone, or maybe with just a tiny, slow rise.
It doesn't sound fantastic at all.
Not at all. It sounds sarcastic. The flat or slightly odd intonation contradicts the word itself. And then there's politeness.
Ah, yes. How does that work?
Well, a gentle upward curve, often combined with a slightly softer tone, when you ask something like, "could you possibly help me?" makes the request sound much more courteous, much softer.
Compared to just saying, could you help me flatly?
Exactly. Saying it with a falling or flat tone might sound okay, but the rising tone definitely adds that layer of politeness, making it feel less like a demand.
So getting these patterns right is really crucial for, well, making sure people understand us correctly, and also for how we come across polite, surprised, certain, uncertain.
Absolutely essential. And it actually goes even deeper than that. It plays a pretty significant role in how we navigate social interactions.
Socially, how so?
Well, we just touched on politeness with requests. Using that rising tone, "could I borrow this art?" It softens it, makes it sound less demanding than if you said it with a falling tone, which could sound a bit abrupt, maybe.
Okay, so it affects politeness.
What else? Friendliness, too. The way your pitch moves up and down within a sentence, not just at the end, creates a sense of warmth, makes you sound more approachable, more engaged, a natural variation.
Instead of sounding flat or monotone.
Exactly. A mix of rising and falling tones within your speech generally sounds more conversational, more welcoming. But then, on the flip side, think about authority.
Okay.
Sometimes a very steady, consistent falling intonation, especially when giving instructions or stating facts firmly, can project a sense of confidence and authority. This needs to be done by 5 o'clock. It sounds definite.
Huh. So it's not just about understanding grammar and vocab, is it? It's also about picking up on these like unspoken vocal cues that shape the whole interaction.
That's it exactly. Being aware of these intonation cues, both in how you understand others and how you use them yourself, can seriously improve how you connect and communicate with English speakers in, well, pretty much any situation. Casual chats, work meetings, you name it.
Okay, this is great. So for our listeners who are maybe intermediate learners working hard on their fluency, what are some common challenges or hurdles they might face when it comes to getting intonation right?
Yeah, there are a few common ones. One that stands out, especially for intermediate learners, is sometimes speaking in a bit of a monotone.
Right, not much pitch variation.
Exactly. The voice stays quite level, quite flat, and this can make it really hard for listeners to catch the intended meaning or emotion, and frankly, it can sound a bit unengaging or even bored.
Okay, monotone. What else?
Another frequent issue is actually overusing rising intonation.
Oh, how does that happen?
Well, sometimes learners feel uncertain, so almost every sentence ends with that upward inflection, like everything's a questioning, even statement theory.
Ah, I think I've heard that. It makes the speaker sound hesitant, maybe.
Exactly. It can make them sound perpetually unsure of what they're saying. And then I guess a final point is just lack of conscious practice. Many learners are so focused, understandably, on getting the words right, the grammar right.
That intonation kind of gets forgotten.
Precisely. They might understand it passively, but they don't actively work on producing it in their own speech.
So really, the very first step is just becoming aware, starting to actually notice it more when listening to English.
Absolutely. That's fundamental. Pay active attention when you're listening, whether it's, listening to us right now or watching movies, listening to music, or in conversations. Start consciously trying to pick up on those patterns. Where does the voice go up? Where does it go down?
Okay, so awareness first.
Mm-hmm.
Then what? Let's say we're starting to notice it more. What are some practical things we can actively do to practice and improve our own intonation?
Okay, yeah, practical stuff. There are several really good techniques. One that's super effective is mimicry.
Mimicry, like copying.
Exactly. Find short audio clips of native speakers, maybe from news reports or pronunciation websites, dialogues. Listen closely to how they use intonation, then try to copy it exactly.
To record ourselves.
Yes, definitely record yourself doing it. Then listen back and compare your version to the original speaker. It can be incredibly revealing to hear the difference side by side.
That sounds like a really focused way to train both your ear and your voice. Okay, what else?
Another good one is simple intonation drills. Take some basic sentences. He's coming to the party. Is she leaving now? And practice saying them deliberately. First with a clear falling intonation, then with a clear rising one.
Just focusing purely on the pitch pattern.
Purely on the pitch. And it can actually help to visualize it. Maybe even draw little arrows above the words on a piece of paper, a downward arrow for falling E, an upward one for rising.
Oh, I like that. A visual cue. That could definitely help embed the pattern.
It really can. And then, of course, you need to move into practice that's a bit more communicative dialogue practice.
Like role-playing.
Yeah. Role-play everyday situations. Ordering coffee, asking for directions, making small talk. But while you're doing it, make a conscious effort to use the right intonation for your statements, your questions, your requests.
And if you have someone to practice with.
Even better, if you have a language partner or a tutor, specifically ask them for feedback. Ask them, did that sound like a statement or a question based on how my voice went? That direct feedback is gold.
For sure. Any other tools or, I don't know, tricks?
Yeah, actually, technology can help here too. There are some pretty cool visual pitch tracker apps and websites out there.
Oh, really? How do they work?
They basically show you a graph of your voice's pitch in real time as you speak into your microphone. So you can literally see if your pitch is going up or down, and you can try to match a target pattern.
Wow. Instant visual feedback. That sounds useful.
It can be, yeah. And one more specific exercise, playing around with tag questions. Take a statement like, it's going to rain, add the tag, isn't it? And practice saying that tag question part, the isn't it, first with a rising tone, genuinely asking, and then with a falling tone, more like stating a shared assumption. Hearing that difference helps you grasp the nuance.
These all sound like really solid, actionable steps. Okay, but then how do we bridge the gap? How do we start actually using this more consciously in real, spontaneous conversations? Because, it can feel like juggling too many balls at once, vocabulary, grammar, and intonation.
It definitely takes conscious effort and practice, no doubt about it. But you don't have to do everything at once. Start small.
Okay. Small steps. Like what?
Like when you find yourself asking for clarification in a conversation, make a deliberate effort to use that rising intonation. That invites them to explain more.
Okay, focus on one specific situation.
Right, or focus on expressing one emotion. If you feel surprised, try to let your pitch show it rather than just saying, I am surprised. A simple, really are, with a clear upward jump can do the job.
Let the melody do the work.
Let the melody do some work, yes. And don't underestimate the power of pauses. Sometimes, just a tiny pause right before your final word with a falling tone can add emphasis. That meal was amazing. It gives the last word more weight.
Those are great manageable tips for actually weaving it into conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, any general advice for making sure our practice time is as effective as possible?
Yeah, a few key things. Consistency, as always, is huge. Try to record yourself practicing intonation regularly, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day. Little and often is better than one long session once a month.
Keep it regular.
Definitely. And shadowing is fantastic for intonation.
Shadowing, that's listening and speaking along at the same time.
Exactly. You listen to a native speaker and try to speak their words almost simultaneously, really focusing on matching their rhythm, their stress, and crucially, their intonation, the ups and downs.
Okay, shadowing. What else?
Remember where the main pitch changes usually happen. It's typically on the important words, the content words, nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs. The smaller function words like the, is, to often have a flatter, more neutral pitch. So focus your main ups and downs on the key words.
Focus on the important words. Got it.
And finally, looping back to what we said earlier, seek feedback. If you can, get input from language partners, tutors, or even patient native-speaking friends. They can often hear things in your intonation patterns you might be completely unaware of and point them out.
That outside perspective is invaluable.
Wow.
This has been incredibly insightful. It's so clear that intonation isn't just, an optional extra. It's really fundamental to sounding natural and truly fluent in English.
It absolutely is. Those rising and falling patterns, they're not just decoration. They are essential signals for how we understand each other, distinguishing questions from statements, commands from requests, picking up on sarcasm, enthusiasm, doubt, all those subtle shades.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening who really wants to take their spoken English to that next level, consciously paying attention to and practicing intonation is, well, it's a crucial step. You can't really skip it if fluency is the goal.
So just to quickly recap the core ideas, we've got rising intonation, which often signals a question or maybe that you're not quite finished speaking yet.
Keeps things open.
And then falling intonation, which usually signals the end of a thought, a statement, or a command. It provides closure.
Right.
And beyond just those basics, the way we use these patterns adds these vital layers of meaning, emotion, and social nuance to everything we say.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So the big takeaway really is to start listening for it actively everywhere you hear English, and then begin experimenting, trying to incorporate these techniques into your own speech. Don't be afraid to play with your voice a little.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's maybe a final thought for you to consider. If understanding this melody of English doesn't just make you clearer, but actually helps you connect with people on a more nuanced, maybe even deeper level.
Yeah.
What new subtleties in communication, what new connections might you unlock just by focusing more consciously on your intonation? It really goes beyond just speaking correctly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's about being truly heard and understood.
A lot to think about there.
Indeed. Thanks so much for tuning in to Speak More Fluently today.